Welcome back. If you're just joining us, it's Daybreak on Trust Television. We would now serve you the major stories that made the front pages of the national newspapers. And we will start as usual with the Daily Trust. And on the cover of the Daily Trust this morning is an issue that seemed to have impacted just about everyone in this country. DSS gives NNPC marketers 48 hours to earn fuel scarcity. Vows to deal with economic saboteurs. NNPC has 1.9 billion liters in stock, and marketers to get product at ex-depot price. You'll find the details of this story on page 4. Interesting development. One would wonder why the DSS had to wait for an entire year to give this kind of directives. And well, let's see what impact this will have on the generality of Nigerians. And moving on to other stories that made the front pages this morning. CBN insists on cash withdrawal limit as reps summon Emefiele. You'll find that story on page 23. 11 foreign firms bid for Ajakuta Steel Company. That story is on page 7. And AFCFTA, Nigeria targets 12 billion trade and 10% of African global imports. You'll find the details of that on page 25. To other stories, questions over enforcement as VIPs escape content conviction. Very interesting development there. In the space of 1 week, we saw several high-profile Nigerians. The Chief of Army Staff, the Inspector General of Police, all coming under the the judiciary. But this story will give you all that you need to know regarding that story. Boko Haram demands bicycle, condiments, and others from farmers. And Sirika under fire over boasts about funds to prosecute election. And finally, we have this story from the CDS. We are under pressure to compromise elections. And this is according to the Chief of Defense Staff. These are the major stories that make the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper this morning.
All right. Next up is the Guardian newspaper this morning. The lead story there says, we won't compromise 2023 despite pressure, says Irabor, as the Chief of Defense Staff. It has the riders that says, PDP shun all entreaties, temptations to thwart peaceful polls. Stakeholders want synergy among INEC, NCC, NICOMSAT for hitch-free election. 2023 polls significant to Africa's stability, West African leaders say. You'll also find above the lead story, Oshibajo visits Vietnam's president, harps on why Nigeria is best placed to invest in Africa. Don't buy meter, transformer, wires. NERC tells electricity consumers. I won't leave Atiku. Maiba insists as hoodlums attack house, destroy cars and others. DSS gives NNPC, Ipman, Nupeng, others 48 hours to end fuel scarcity. You also find, despite reps' intervention, Emefiele says no going back on cashless policy, withdrawal limits. You'd also see other stories below the pictorial there. As a matter of fact, the pictorial shows military, INGOs, and challenges of winning peace against insurgency. You'd find the details of that. I'm sure those are images from the IDP camps. And so these are some of the stories on the front page of the Guardian newspaper this morning.
And we move on to leadership on Friday with some interesting stories there on the front page. With a major story there which reads, 78 days to go. Military will resist pressure to scuttle 2023 election, says the Defense Headquarters. Saboteurs, bad eggs to face firing squad. Atiku urges politicians to focus on voters, not pressure military. Army refutes reports of troop aborting pregnancies in the Northeast. That was a weighty allegations there made on the Nigerian military. We hope for the sake of common sanity that this report is not what it claims to be. Moving on to other stories on the front page, PMB will leave Nigeria better than he met it. This is according to Professor Gambari. Suspend implementation of cash withdrawal policy, reps tell CBN. Multi-million naira custom armored vehicles wrath away. And DSS give marketers 48 hours to end fuel scarcity. Ajakuta steel won't take off anytime soon. And this is according to the Minister of Steel. And to other stories there on the front page, Leadership Award, a landmark history for me. Nigerian Immigration Service, CG, Jere. We have uncovered plot to blackmail Wike over G5 demands. This is according to the Rivers State government. These are the stories on the front page of Leadership on Friday.
All right. So let's take a look at the Punch newspaper this morning. The lead story there talks about cash withdrawal. It says Emefiele insists on limits, reps demand suspension. The writer says CBN governor says withdrawal limits will be increased or reduced. Customers return 1 trillion naira old notes to banks. Bills kept in CBN vaults. No banks in our constituencies. Cashless policy can't work. That's according to reps. You would find also INEC plans voting centers for 2 million IDPs. LCCI knocks FG over worsening credit ratings. And these are the major stories on the, of course, not forgetting the reps query, NNPC, CBN, others over unaudited accounts. These are the major stories on the Punch newspaper this morning.
We move on quickly to the Nation newspaper this morning, still staying with the cash review. Emefiele, review of cash withdrawal policy likely. 1 trillion mopped up. Reps invite CBN governor wants plan suspended. And to other stories there, Siemens transformers arrive to boost electricity supply. You'll find that on page 7. Gunmen steal 4 babies in a raid of hospital. No place is safe. The details of that you'll find on page 4. 2023, 5.6 million PVCs collected in Lagos, says INEC. Rivers government alleges plot to blackmail Wike over G5. And to other stories there on the front page, petrol crisis must end tomorrow, says DSS. NNPCL, 1.9 billion liters available. And to other stories, CDS, Irabor military won't be pressurized to compromise 2023 election. NEDC kicks off building of 12.5 billion abandoned 54-kilometer road. And other projects right there on the northeast. Osun APC not opposed to reconciliation with Aregbesol's men. If you want to know who is saying this, you open up to page 31 of the Nation newspaper. These are the major stories on the front page of the Nation.
All right, now let's get perspectives on some of these stories this morning. We have Nuruddin Abdallah. He's the editor of 21st Century Chronicle to give us perspectives on some of the major stories that we've seen on our papers this morning. Thank you for joining us on Daybreak this morning.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
All right. So, well, we start with the lead story on the Daily Trust newspaper. The DSS is giving NNPC ultimatum to ensure that the fuel scarcity that we are experiencing goes away as soon as possible. In fact, 48 hours, not just, there's a timeline to this. And one is wondering, what does this mean, really?
So actually, it was the same question many observers were asking when the statement was released by the DSS spokes. In the statement, I think he tried to answer this question because people will be wondering, why is the Secret Service involved? Whatever it is, we may have a reprieve. Yeah, there may be the chaos at the gas stations may go in the next 48 hours as directed by the DSS. But for how long shall that be? That is the question. The DSS if you look at the content of the statement, they're talking about the scarcity is capable of inciting public disturbance and what have you, particularly as we move to Christmas. This thing has been ongoing for quite some time now. But because we're heading towards the festive period, Christmas around the corner, that's the time people move from one part of the country to the other, New Year as well. So, but the major is more or less cosmetic, because during the meeting, there was no any attempt based on the content of the DSS statement to actually try to resolve the contending issues.
Could it be that the DSS perhaps have certain information about some persons who are behind this as saboteurs, who now need to be perhaps arrested because, like they say, this is likely going to constitute an issue of national security?
This thing has been ongoing. Why now? They are concerned with the Christmas, when there will be mass movement and what have you. And again, they latch so much on the 1.9, is it billion or is it liters? The NNPC say it has in this kitty. So what NNPC may simply do now is to unleash those millions of liters to the public, and the scarcity in the next couple of days, maybe weeks. The scarcity will return to the status quo after Christmas, because no single attempt was made to actually address the many issues. That's it. It's cosmetic.
The petroleum marketers, Ipman, said something along the lines of not being able to access this petroleum product from NNPC depots, but rather from independent depot owners. So that's part of what's constituting the problem, and that's a shift from the initial, the arrangement where, independent marketers are able to access the petroleum product. So why is the NNPC changing its mode of distribution?
That is the question that the DSS should have asked them. And when DSS detects saboteurs, they don't announce the detection of saboteurs on the pages of newspapers. They should arrest them or likely prosecute them. When there is a threat, you nip it in the bud. You understand? Again, the dollar crisis. So there are a lot of things. So what DSS is simply doing, they're actually trying to avert chaos. They will force NNPC now to release those liters in its reservoir so that there won't be crisis. Mr. Sunday should be able to travel. No, he flies, you understand? And what have you. So that's just it. But it doesn't actually address the main issues by the depot owners, by the PTD, by the Nupeng, by the Mopan, by the independent marketers, and what have you. So thankfully, it's a good temporary reprieve. Maybe we should be able to move around without...
Nigeria, it's beginning to look like a highly regimented society. For us to keep the dollar at bay, the EFCC had to go to town. Now for us to get fuel at the filling station, the DSS is involved. If I was to draw inspiration from the Pentecostal churches, every year they come out and say, this is my year of success. I think we can effectively say 2022 is a year of fuel scarcity. February till date, and we are now requiring the DSS to issue a 48 hours ultimatum. Moving on to another issue that seemed to have made most of the front pages this morning would be the comment by the CDS that they are under pressure to compromise the election. When you hear statements like this coming from no less a person than the CDS,
I hope that the defense team was not misquoted. We blame the journalists, particularly in the third world, Nigeria, everything. The question is, why is he saying this? In serious countries, the parliament should have summoned him, who is trying to truncate the people's will. Yes, he should be asked. Again, he's an appointee of the current administration. who has the capacity, morally, statutorily, to exert pressure on the defense chief? The opposition or those who appointed him?
Well,
so, but again, the CDS brought one issue to the fore, that the military over the years have been involved in election rigging. They have been involved in truncating the people's will. They have been involved in ensuring that those who were elected were not declared. That's what it simply means.
And you know, this is instructive. If you listen to the statement, it says, in accordance with directives of President Muhammadu Buhari, not in accordance with the Constitution. I mean, the Constitution, I'm sure, is clear on some of these issues about the apolitical status of the military. But what we are hearing is that this is because the president has taken a stand about, you know, making sure that we have a free and fair, credible election. You know, so all along, it's always about the man
at the helm
top,
of affairs,
isn't it?
So what you're saying, invariably, what you are inferring is this: if the man at the totem pole of power wants the process truncated, you'll abide by it. Is that what you're saying? I'm not saying.
Well, I'm not saying it.
I mean,
that's what the statement. That's what the statement is saying.
I think we have come to be accustomed to public officers or public servants, as the case may be, listen almost every line of their conversations with the name of the president, according to the president's directive, in accordance with the president's charge. And you wonder when the president ever gives, when you have a clear constitutional mandate on what your roles and responsibilities are and how you should go about them without fear or favor.
I think the military should learn, particularly from the United States, the end of the Trump administration. You saw what happened, the insurrection at the Capitol.
But my worry, you know, with this is, every day we wake up, I mean, just 3 days ago, the finance minister was complaining about our sovereign ratings going down, and that is affecting how much we are able to access funds abroad, because everybody is saying this is your country that is unstable, and ABC, we can't trust that our money is likely to come back until you offer us money at this interest rate. We will not likely to take the risk. Then the next day you wake up to news of the CDS saying they are under pressure. Do you think we have a sense of understanding of the implication of some of the things we say, or do we just do them just to create the impressions that we are working?
I think that is the problem. And Nigeria is not Mali, it's not Chad, it's not Cote d'Ivoire or Guinea-Bissau. We are 218 million people. The other part of the West African sub-region, they can go gaga. We can accommodate them. If there is crisis here, and particularly after almost 24 years of stable democracy or civilian rule, you understand? Whatever the imperfections, you know, the man there is not in his khaki, and what if you, and at least after every 4 years, the electorate, you know, at least they can go to the ballot, you know, and decide who they want to lead them. Therefore, I think the public officers, the international community is watching us, and I don't want them to be sit down in the television and be laughing at us. All these things are signals that are not comfortable signals, to put it that way. Maybe with this, you'll see the State Department, the Foreign Office in the UK, France and whatever. Maybe they'll have to issue warning, because sometimes, you know, these people have to warn us, put us back onto.
I mean, to be fair, this seemed to be an indication of the determination of the president to, you know, live by his words, or I would say act on his words about leaving a legacy of a free and fair election. We've heard how the chiefs, the security chiefs, have constantly tried to isolate themselves from the political shenanigans that we've seen, the violent attacks on campaigns, making certain statements that seem to suggest that they are not going to be involved in any way to, sway the votes in favor of a particular person and all of that. Don't you think so?
Yes, but the choice of words of the defense chief, it is the defense chief that is talking, Mr. Yuwe, not you, not Mr. Sunday or me. The defense chief, you understand. I think what is expected is for the parliament, the National Assembly maybe, to invite him. We want to know who are trying to exert pressure on you to truncate this civilian transition. We should have them arrested. Because that will be the greatest undoing. After 24 years, we are managing. Yes, it is not perfect. I think we can sit down here and talk. That alone. Even though there are instances whereby you go out there, the cars are waiting and you are weeks away or what have you. But at least we have this. So maybe in the next another 25 years.
All right. So while we are at this, Boko Haram demands bicycles, condiments, others from farmers. This is one of the stories on the front page of our newspaper talking about, the insurgency that we have been dealing with. They are now making demands. In fact, I've heard also in the realms of rumor that for the terrorists who are abducting are now demanding payment of ransom in the new currency, even before we begin to, get the currency. So some of these demands, really, when you look at them, what does it say about how audacious and our ability to actually use these things to track and to deal with the insurgents?
I think, in the Northwest and some part of the North Central, there is no clear-cut distinction between bandits, who hitherto only kidnap for economic reasons, and terrorists, the Boko Haram, ISWAP, what have you. The military, to be fair to them, have drastically dealt a blow to the nucleus of the insurgents, particularly in the Northeast. But the mopping operation that we should deal with them, I remember we spent hundreds of millions on linking our SIM with our NIN, right? But up to now, people are making calls demanding ransom. So what happened to that linkage that we did? Is it that there are saboteurs, some telcos, are not cooperating with the Digital Economy Ministry, the NNCC, the Office of the NSA, to ensure that every active line is registered and monitored? So that is it. And even bandits, they are doing that. The demand for bikes, that bike is called Boko Haram, the demand for fuel. And like in the lecture, I think about a week or so ago, they are even demanding for the new currency, or even the CFA, the French. They are equally very active. They don't want to be caught off guard.
When you talk about being active, this morning we read stories of how mosquitoes are readapting and are now attacking people before night falls, since everybody seems to run into their mosquito nets at night. Everybody is looking for innovating to survive. But still in the realms of this story, it's the comments that came out from Daura after the herdsman of the Apex Bank met with the president in the wake of the different summons by the various chambers of the National Assembly to appear over this cash withdrawal limit. What is your general assessment of what is happening? Why are we seeing this heavy cry from people at the top over what should be a limit for people at the bottom? After all, they cannot claim to be ignorant of other channels that they can use to transfer the millions. What's your impression?
From the redesigning of the Naira, you understand? They make it very simplistic. Just maybe the detergent, making it bluish, and and to the last circular. That circular actually will rupture the macroeconomics, particularly at the local level. And again, if you have some few elements that you want to deal with, please deal with them. Leave the old woman in the village. Don't allow the sin of less than 1 million Nigerians affect 200 million Nigerians.
But those are the people controlling the direction of the economy, isn't it? They are the major spenders, right? So how do we change the course of things if we don't target this, small populations, regardless?
You know who the small population are. They are not operating in isolation. They work with bank managers, bureau de change chief executives, and even some element at the Apex Bank. Maybe let's see, 2019, at the peak of the election, 2 bullion vans in broad daylight were captured on camera.
Perhaps this is what this will help to curb, isn't it? The fact that we now have this policy in place,
then
it will
if you want to punish that person in Budillion, why must you go to Karai or Sula Tankarkar in Jigawa and punish the old woman, excuse me, or to go to Oshodi or Aba? Hit the nail on the head.
What's the volume of transaction that actually takes place at that level, and whether the limits will suffice for people in those areas? I mean, it's not that much of a volume of transactions that happen in cash.
Talking about retail banking, the POS operation, take Kaduna, for instance, minus the metropolitan local governments. I'm talking about Kaduna North, Kaduna South, Igebi Chikum, Zaria, remove Brunogari itself. Out of the 23, less than 7 have the presence of banks in them, branches. Take Sanga, for instance. There is no single bank in the local government. If you want to do transaction in banking, you have to come to Akonga or you go to Kapanchan.
But they would also argue that that is the reason why the argument for a cashless is even more expedient. Rather than carry cash in those very remote areas that can expose you to attack, does it not justify the need for a cashless?
Okay, in those areas, maybe at the headquarters of the local government, you have the POS because you need the electricity and the network. There are markets, there are agricultural production centers in those areas. How do you transact if you go to those areas? You have to travel 2 hours, maybe to reach a branch of any bank. How do you transact? So simply because some guys are stuffing money for election, then you will kill that economy.
Okay, so do you think that perhaps we should draft in the mobile money agents to be able to play along with this new policy so that it can take care of people at that rural level?
Yes. What I'm saying is this. I don't know. The people who are perceived to be defrauding the economy are known. They are known to the entire system. The DSS, all the security, the banking system. We have NFIU. Right?
Well,
you have the Bureau de Change Operations.
Apprehending them seems so much of a huge task.
Okay,
here.
that's why you are killing the rural economy.
All right.
That's what we're saying.
I think we would. This conversation is going to continue for a long time. Let's see. We'll keep tabs on the invitation to the National Assembly and see what comes out with it. Because yesterday it appears the governor's body language is suggesting that they could raise the limit a bit or even drop it further a bit. We are not sure where that will tilt, but we'll continue to keep tabs and see how this moves on. But something else caught my attention when we were reviewing the paper, and that is coming from the Guardian newspaper. Don't buy meters, transformers, wires, NERC tells electricity consumers. I mean, I live in a place where we are contributed for transformers, we are contributed for wires. I can't remember when they made any budget for it to incorporate new houses on the national grid. Is this visible or practicable in our current situation as Nigerians?
You know, this NERC, this is not the first time. It's as valuable and practicable as the court orders, committing the chief of army staff, the EFCC boss, and the police IG to prison. You understand? You know, they are all orders in vain.
That's right.
You know, by law, what they say is correct. But if your transformer is faulty, you write the KETCO or you write the relevant electricity company. They will tell you to be on queue. You can spend 1 year
on queue
without having that transformer replaced. So what do?
People resorting to self-help.
Because you will spend 1 year, even if it is one pole. No, they will tell you, yes, yeah, we can do it. But you know it's a long queue.
And perhaps it could involve racketeering in some cases.
So I think maybe what the NERC should do is to force the companies to be doing this. Maybe making maybe a task force. When there are such issues, okay, you call this toll-free number. You understand? And review the situation.
Is it for the lack of calls? In my mind, I've been thinking that we could approach this thing the same way the state and the federal government behaves. If there is a federal road and you can't fix it, we'll fix it and we get a refund. If it will take you so long to raise the money, if we raise the money, can you at least appropriate it in the bills and excuse us for a number of months?
That's the problem. Again, you know, it's a community thing. Your bill is 50,000 a day because you have a very big whatever. Mine is just 10. His is just 15 or 20, you understand? How do you appropriate it? Some are not even paying. Some are not even metered. So that's the problem. So it's a whole lot of, and I think deliberately, the system was fashioned in that direction. Up till this moment, the electricity companies, you know, we still have those, I can't call them, we call them NEPA 2 in some northern part of the country, but the racketeering goes on. They will tell you, okay, wait, right. You come back 1 week, you even see the letter, the something, you have to write another one. It may take months, so you can't remain in darkness for that. So people have to resort. The big guys around, they say they have to come, community health, you know, we buy this thing, and we hand over to the electricity company, which is a privately
run. How we have enriched privately run businesses in Nigeria. Interesting. That's the much that we can bring to you on the newspaper review this morning. Thank you very much, Nuruddin Abdullah, for making it here.
Thank you very much.
Even though every time you keep abdicating your right to me, he keeps describing me as a big man when indeed he is the big man. Thank you, and we hope that when next we call on you, you will do us the honor to show up in the studio and provide our audience with this insightful perspective on issues. We will draw the curtain here on the newspaper review. See you at the top of the hour, where we'll serve you more from Daybreak on Trust Television. Please stay with us.
But in a situation where you find that a person look at the same,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
I have said that